All right, welcome back. So good to know you're still tuned in. Now we want to continue the conversation. Now we're talking about the corrupt church, and this is the theme of the letter written to the church at Thyatira. So I want to ask, what is corruption in the light of all of this, especially in the light of what Jesus said to the church at Thyatira? How do we connect with it today?
Amen.
Yes, sir. Amen.
I think one word that stood out talking about corruption is the word dishonesty.
Okay.
And anybody in any position can actually do the same. And a lot of times when we talked about it, the focus is about people in authority and how they mismanage whatever is in their possession and all that. But it's something that stems in every sphere of life. You know, somebody, imagine going to see someone in an office, and even the guard at the gates is demanding some certain things before he can allow you access and all of those things. So it does in every sphere of life. You know, once there is dishonesty in the way we handle things in our care, definitely that's a seed of corruption.
I think I would say corruption has been mystified over the years. It's like we keep saying corruption, but we seem not to really, we've not been able to really place it. Like, what is corruption? What is it? I think it's time we just just say it as it is. Corruption is sin. That's all. It means to be contaminated. You know, God created you pure rather. And anything, okay, let's even put it this way. The meaning of the word father, you know, God is our father. The meaning of the word father is from the Greek word pater, which actually means source. So anything that is not flowing from God into us is corruption. Anything, you know, for example, it's really amazing the use of terms. When you check the Old Covenant, you talk about the Israelites, when God says they committed adultery and fornication. Many times people think it's about sex between a man and a woman. But God was simply saying, hey, you know, the word adultery has a lot to do with adulteration, like mixing something that is not of the same kind, like you're diluting something, or you're kind of mixing the different kinds, you know. And so it's illegal. That's the whole idea. You know, illegal relationship. And so when God talks about adultery, for example, and fornication, many times in the Old Covenant, when he, you know, especially Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and all of that, he was talking about going to serve other idols or to follow graven images and other gods and all of that, and leaving him who was espoused to them. So when we talk about corruption, really, many times the whole idea is like, okay, it's in this action, it's in bribery, or it's in maybe littering the place, or it's in not carrying out your service accurately. But it all boils down to one thing: sin. And corruption is in the spirit of the fact that God didn't put that in you. It's coming from a different source, the devil. So if God is my father, it means that everything that flows into my life, I like what the Bible says. If any man be in Christ, what? It's a new creature. It says all things are passed away. Then he says what? Behold, see it. Recognize it for what it is. Say all things have become new. And then he tells us where the things are coming from. He says these things are of God. In other words, what does it mean for something to be of God? You hail from God, you originate from God. These things come from God. It's sourced from God. So meaning that as a believer, anything that is not of God, including sickness and disease and every of the works of the devil, is corruption. So but when we look at it as corruption is just, okay, not doing that, then it kind of blinds us to the real problem. That means, now look at the way we look at corruption is more of, let's say, as it has to do with people seeing what we do. Now, if we see corruption for what it is, it now makes us to even think about ourselves. Am I living right? Am I doing the right thing? Are the things flowing into my life only from God? Or am I allowing things from other sources to flow into my life? Because my action is now the result of what is flowing into my life. Remember what Jesus said. He says, not what gets into a man that defiles him, but what comes out. So when those things come into me and I process them, then they kind of come into oneness. Like my character, it shows in my personality, it shows in how I do things, what I say, and every other thing. So I believe it's good that we get to the root of the matter. Many times we just want to deal with it from the branches, the display of corruption. But what is corruption? Corruption is sin. So that's why when we talk about a whole nation, the Bible says that righteousness exalts a nation. They say, but sin is what? A reproach to any people. And we know that the world is the way it is today because of what? Sin. You know, there was no sickness until sin came. There was no death until sin came. There was no wickedness of man until sin came. So sin is the reason why things are the way they are in the world. Glory to God. You want to add something about
You've just hit it on.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times, when we hear the word, well, sorry to say, living in this part of the world, you know, where the word everybody believes, it's very obvious that corruption is a key thing here. We always actually, in fact, somehow when we hear the word corruption, the only place we can link it to are people in government.
Yeah, leadership. And we just disconnect ourselves.
That is just the picture. But I love the definition you just gave. That's just the bottom line of it all. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. That's why, speaking about the same church that God was speaking to, the writing this letter to, the Bible says, to him that overcome, I will give him the rod to rule the nations. We can see it as being president also, but his rod there typifies authority.
Glory to God.
The rights, the ability to stand in that right side of God, to function and to do things as God will intend it to be.
Glory to God. That's so powerful. And it's important we understand that sin is not just an act. The main theme of sin is that sin is a nature. And the only way to deal with the nature of sin is to replace it with the nature of righteousness. How do we replace it with the nature of righteousness? Get born again. A rebirth will do that. Glory to God. All right. Thanks for staying around. We're going to continue this series in the next video. Just click on the next one. God bless you.